The air conditioning unit wheezed like a fading man as I crawled through Mrs. Henderson's attic at 11:47 p.m., my flashlight cutting through cobwebs and 30 years of accumulated dust. This is what my life had become. Midnight emergency calls because some contractor had installed the ductwork with all the skill of a drunk toddler. I'm Nathan Brooks, 39 years old, owner of Brooks HVAC Solutions. Not exactly the dream I had at 18, but it pays the bills and keeps food on the table. More importantly, it keeps me busy enough to avoid thinking about how my marriage has been circling the drain like water in a broken sink. The Henderson job should have taken 20 minutes. Fix the loose connection, collect my emergency fee, go home to my wife Colleen sleeping peacefully in our king-size bed. Instead, I found myself lying flat on my stomach, wrestling with ductwork that some genius had secured with duct tape and prayer. That's when I heard her voice drifting up through the vents. Colleen was awake, talking on the phone in our kitchen directly below. Her voice carried that particular tone, the one she used to use with me during our first year of marriage. Soft, intimate, full of laughter that bubbled up from somewhere deep in her chest. "I can't believe you said that to your boss," she giggled. "You're terrible, Liam. Absolutely terrible." Liam, her ex-boyfriend, the one she claimed was just a friend now and that I needed to accept as part of her past. The same Liam she'd been inviting to our barbecues, our anniversary dinners, our Christmas parties for the past 8 months. I stopped working and listened, my heart hammering against my ribs. "Nathan's working late again," she said, and I could hear her moving around the kitchen, probably making tea like she always did when she couldn't sleep. "He's always working. Sometimes I think he cares more about other people's air conditioners than he does about me." The betrayal in her voice wasn't directed at Liam. It was directed at me. She was painting me as the neglectful husband to justify whatever this conversation really was. "You always understood me," she continued. "Even when we were kids, you got me in ways Nathan never has. He's a good man, but he's so practical, so boring." I lay there in the dark, surrounded by insulation and the smell of old wood, listening to my wife of 12 years tear me apart for another man's entertainment. The worst part wasn't the words themselves. It was how natural she sounded, how comfortable. Like this wasn't the first conversation of this type. I know, she said, her voice dropping to a whisper. "We agreed to take things slow, but God, Liam, when you kissed me last weekend..." My hands clenched around my flashlight so hard I thought the plastic might crack. "I should go," she said finally. "Nathan will be home soon, and I don't want him asking questions. You know how he gets when he's suspicious." "How he gets? Like I was the problem? Like wanting your wife to not flirt with her ex-boyfriend was some kind of character flaw." I heard her hang up, heard her footsteps moving toward the stairs. By the time I finished the Henderson job and drove home 20 minutes later, she was in bed, pretending to sleep. I stood in the doorway watching her fake the deep, even breathing of slumber and realized that my marriage wasn't just broken, it was already over. I just hadn't gotten the memo yet. The next morning, Colleen sat across from me at our kitchen table, sipping coffee and scrolling through her phone like nothing had happened. She was still beautiful at 37, with the kind of blonde hair that required monthly maintenance and green eyes that had once made me forget my own name. Now those same eyes barely glanced up when I walked into the room. "How was the emergency call?" she asked, not looking up from her screen. "Fine," I said. "Just some loose ductwork, nothing major." "That's good." She took another sip of coffee. "Oh, I forgot to mention, Liam's coming to dinner on Sunday. I thought it would be nice to have him over, catch up properly." There it was. The casual manipulation disguised as social planning. 6 months ago, I would have objected. 3 months ago, I would have asked why. Today, I just nodded. "Sure," I said. "Should I pick up steaks?" She looked up then, surprise flickering across her face. She'd been expecting a fight, maybe even hoping for one. Instead, I was giving her exactly what she wanted, and it unsettled her. "That would be great," she said slowly. "Maybe get some of those thick ribeyes from Morrison's." "Consider it done." I finished my coffee and stood up. "I've got 3 service calls today, so I'll be home late. Don't wait up." I kissed the top of her head like I had every morning for 12 years, and she leaned into it out of habit. For just a moment, we looked like the couple we used to be. Then the moment passed, and we were back to being strangers sharing a mortgage. As I drove to my first appointment, I thought about that phone conversation. Not just the words, but the timeline. "When you kissed me last weekend." Last weekend, Colleen had told me she was having a girls' night with her friend Rita. She'd come home at midnight smelling like wine and claiming they'd talked until closing time at some new bistro downtown. Except now I knew she'd been with Liam. Kissing Liam. planning whatever this thing between them was while I sat at home watching Netflix and waiting for her to come back to me. The first service call was at the Morrison Elementary School, where the boiler was making sounds like a cement mixer full of gravel. I spent 2 hours replacing corroded pipes and listening to the principal complain about the school board's maintenance budget. Normally, work like this cleared my head, gave me something concrete to focus on. Today, I kept thinking about Colleen's voice in the dark, the way she'd said Liam's name like a prayer. By lunch, I'd made a decision. I wasn't going to confront Colleen, not yet. I wasn't going to demand explanations or ultimatums or marriage counseling. Instead, I was going to do something that would have been unthinkable 6 months ago. I was going to call Liam's wife. Mara Quinn had always been friendly at the few social events where our paths crossed. She was a freelance accountant, sharp as a razor, and twice as cutting when she wanted to be. More importantly, she had the same problem I did, a spouse who was apparently forgetting they were married. I found her number in Colleen's phone contacts while she was in the shower that evening. Mara picked up on the third ring. "Nathan?" she said, surprise evident in her voice. "Is everything okay?" "That depends," I said. "Can we talk? Somewhere private?" There was a long pause. When she spoke again, her voice was careful, controlled. "What's this about?" "I think you know." Another pause. Then, "Coffee tomorrow morning? There's a place called Murphy's on 5th Street. 9 a.m.? I'll be there." She hung up without saying goodbye, and I sat there staring at my phone, wondering if I'd just crossed a line I could never uncross. Then I thought about Colleen upstairs, probably texting Liam about their dinner plans, and decided I didn't care about lines anymore. Some bridges are meant to be burned. Murphy's coffee shop was the kind of place that survived on habit rather than quality. Worn vinyl booths, coffee that tasted like it had been brewing since the Clinton administration, and a waitress named Dolores who'd been working there since the place opened in 1987. It was also the kind of place where nobody paid attention to other people's conversations, which made it perfect for the discussion I was about to have. Mara was already there when I arrived, sitting in a corner booth with her back to the wall. She'd always struck me as someone who liked to see all the exits, and today that impression was stronger than ever. She was dressed in dark jeans and a gray sweater, her brown hair pulled back in a ponytail that made her look younger than her 35 years. "You look like hell," she said as I slid into the booth across from her. "Thanks. You always know just what to say to make a guy feel special." She didn't smile. "And let's skip the small talk, Nathan. Why did you call me?" I pulled out my phone and opened the photo gallery. For the past 2 days, I'd been doing some detective work. It turns out that when you share a cloud account with someone, you get access to all their photos, including the ones they think they've hidden. I turned the phone toward her. The first photo showed Colleen and Liam at some upscale restaurant I didn't recognize. She was wearing the red dress she'd claimed to have spilled wine on during her girls' night with Rita. Her hand was on Liam's arm, and they were looking at each other like they were the only two people in the world. Mara's face went very still. "When was this taken?" "Last Saturday night, according to the metadata, around 8:30 p.m. I swiped to the next photo. This one showed them walking along the riverfront, Liam's arm around Colleen's waist, then another of them sharing dessert at what looked like a different restaurant entirely. "There are about 30 more," I said quietly, "from the past 2 months. Hotels, restaurants, that little bed and breakfast up in Millfield. Want to see those too?" She reached across the table and took my phone, scrolling through the images with the methodical precision of someone conducting an audit. Her expression never changed, but I could see her jaw tightening with each swipe. "Snake," she said finally, setting the phone down. "That bastard told me he was working late. Client dinners, he said. Important meetings that couldn't be rescheduled. Colleen's been feeding me the same line. Girls' nights, book club meetings, volunteer work at the animal shelter." I picked up my coffee and took a sip. It was as terrible as expected. Funny how their lies lined up so perfectly. Mara leaned back in the booth, studying me with dark eyes that missed nothing. "So what do you want to do about it?" "That depends. How angry are you?" "On a scale of 1 to 10, about a 15. She drummed her fingers on the table. "Liam and I have been married for 8 years. We've been trying to have kids for the past 3. You know what he told me last month? That maybe we should take a break from trying, focus on our relationship for a while." "Jesus. Yeah." Her laugh was bitter. Turns out he was focusing on his relationship all right. Just not with me. I studied her face, looking for signs of the devastation I'd been feeling since that night in Mrs. Henderson's attic. Instead, I saw something else. Cold, calculating anger. The kind that didn't explode outward, but turned inward, sharpening itself into a weapon. "I have an idea," she said, "but you're not going to like it. Try me. She leaned forward, lowering her voice. We don't confront them. Not yet. Instead, we let them think they're getting away with it. Meanwhile, we document everything. Every lie, every secret meeting, every hotel receipt. We build a case. A case for what? Public humiliation. Her smile was sharp enough to cut glass. This is a small town, Nathan. Reputation matters here. Colleen works in healthcare, right? How do you think her boss would feel about an employee who conducts affairs with patients? Liam's not a patient at her clinic. No, but he could be. Easy enough to arrange an appointment, get him on the books. Then when word gets out about their relationship... She shrugged. Medical ethics violations are serious business. I stared at her. You're talking about destroying their careers. I'm talking about consequences. They made choices. They can live with the results. Part of me was horrified by the coldness in her voice. The other part, the part that had been listening to my wife plan her affair in our own kitchen, found it oddly comforting. There's something else, I said. I think we should be seen together, publicly. She raised an eyebrow. Explain. They're not trying to hide their relationship anymore. Colleen's bringing Liam to dinner at our house this Sunday. They're getting comfortable, maybe even a little careless. What do you think would happen if they saw us together? Really together? Understanding dawned in her eyes. They'd assume we're doing exactly what they're doing. And they'd have no right to complain about it. After all, if it's okay for them to rekindle old flames, then it's okay for us to find new ones. She was quiet for a moment, thinking. It's manipulative as hell. Yes, it is. I like it. She extended her hand across the table. Partners? I shook it, her grip firm and warm. Partners. We spent the next hour planning our campaign. Mara was ruthlessly efficient, approaching the problem like she would a complicated tax return. We would take turns following them, documenting their meetings. We would start appearing together at local events. Nothing too obvious, just enough to plant seeds of gossip. Most importantly, we would wait for the perfect moment to reveal everything we knew. There's a charity gala next month, Mara said. The annual Children's Hospital fundraiser. Half the town will be there, including all the medical professionals from Colleen's workplace. That would be the perfect venue for a public revelation. You want to wait that long? Good revenge takes time, Nathan. Rush it, and you miss opportunities. Take your time, and you can orchestrate something beautiful. As we prepared to leave, she touched my arm. One more thing. How are you holding up? Really? The question caught me off guard. I'd been so focused on planning and plotting that I hadn't stopped to examine my own emotional state. I'm angry, I said finally. Angrier than I've ever been in my life. But also, relieved? Does that make sense? Perfect sense. You finally know where you stand. The uncertainty is over. What about you? Her expression darkened. I'm going to make him regret the day he met her. And when I'm done, she's going to wish she'd never heard the name Liam Quinn. I believed her. More than that, I was looking forward to watching her work. The next few days passed in a strange kind of suspended animation. Colleen continued her routine of lies and casual betrayal, while I played the role of the oblivious husband. She told me about her day at work, complained about her boss, even asked my opinion on what wine to serve with Sunday's dinner. All of it delivered with the same casual intimacy we'd shared for 12 years, as if she wasn't systematically destroying our marriage one secret meeting at a time. Meanwhile, Mara and I began our surveillance operation. She followed them to lunch on Wednesday, snapping photos from across the street as they held hands over pasta at Romano's. I tracked them to the Riverside Hotel on Friday evening, watching from my truck as they disappeared into the lobby together. Each piece of evidence felt like a small victory, proof that we weren't the paranoid spouses, but the wronged parties. Sunday arrived with the kind of crisp October weather that made our neighborhood look like a postcard. I spent the morning cleaning the house and preparing dinner, playing the role of the gracious host. Colleen flitted around in a new dress I didn't recognize, checking her reflection in every available mirror. You seem nervous, I observed as she adjusted her lipstick for the third time. I'm not nervous. I just want everything to be perfect. It's just Liam. You've known him forever. She shot me a sharp look. That doesn't mean I can't want to make a good impression. At 6 o'clock sharp, the doorbell rang. Colleen practically sprinted to answer it, and I heard her greet Liam with the kind of enthusiasm she hadn't shown me in months. Nathan, Liam called out as they entered the living room. Great to see you, buddy. Liam Quinn was the kind of man who'd probably been described as charming his entire life. Tall, well-dressed, with the sort of easy confidence that came from never having to worry about money or consequences. He worked in commercial real estate, selling office buildings to corporations with more money than sense. Liam, I said, shaking his hand. His grip was firm, his smile perfect. Thanks for coming. Thanks for having me. This place looks great. You guys have really made it a home. The casual way he said, "you guys," while looking directly at my wife made my skin crawl. But I smiled and offered him a drink, playing my part in this elaborate charade. Dinner was an exercise in psychological torture. Liam and Colleen sat across from each other, maintaining just enough distance to seem appropriate while exchanging glances that spoke volumes. They reminisced about their high school days, shared inside jokes, and generally acted like I was a piece of furniture that happened to be able to pass the salt. "Remember that time we drove up to Miller's Lake?" Colleen said, laughing at some memory I wasn't part of. "We must have stayed up all night talking." "Best night of my senior year," Liam replied, his eyes never leaving her face. I excused myself to check on dessert and found myself standing in the kitchen, gripping the counter so hard my knuckles went white. This was what Mara had meant about taking time. If I confronted them now, it would be messy, emotional, unsatisfying. But if I waited, if I let them dig their own graves... My phone buzzed. A text from Mara. "How's dinner going?" I typed back. "Like watching a car accident in slow motion." "Perfect. Let them get comfortable. The fall will be harder." I served dessert with a smile, listened to more stories about their shared past, and bid Liam a warm farewell when he finally left at 10:30. Colleen stood at the door, watching his car disappear down the street, and for a moment her mask slipped. The look on her face was pure longing. "He seems happy," I said from behind her. She startled, not realizing I was there. "What?" "Liam. He seems happy. Content with his life?" "Oh, yes, I suppose he does." "How's Mara doing? I haven't seen her around lately." Colleen's expression flickered. Guilt, maybe, or fear. "I wouldn't know. We're not really friends." "That's too bad. She seems like a nice woman." I went upstairs, leaving Colleen standing in the doorway, and began planning phase 2 of our campaign. If she wanted to play games, I was more than ready to play along. The difference was, I intended to win. The next 2 weeks fell into a rhythm of deception and counter-deception that would have been almost funny if it hadn't been destroying my marriage. Colleen continued her elaborate fiction of book clubs and volunteer work, while I documented every lie with the methodical precision of a forensic accountant. She was getting bolder, staying out later, making less effort to cover her tracks. Meanwhile, Mara and I began our own public campaign. It started small. Coffee at Murphy's became lunch at Rossetti's, the Italian place downtown where half the town ate on weekends. We made sure to sit by the window, where anyone walking by could see us talking and laughing together. Mara was surprisingly good company when she wasn't plotting someone's downfall, sharp, funny, with a dry wit that reminded me why I'd enjoyed talking to her at parties. "You're not what I expected," she said over pasta and wine on our third date. "What did you expect?" "I don't know. Someone more bitter, maybe? Broken down by years of marriage to a woman like Colleen? Give it time. I might surprise you with how bitter I can be." She laughed, and I realized it was the first genuine laugh I'd heard from a woman in months. "I doubt that. You're too decent for proper bitterness." "We'll see about that." Our server, a young woman named Jessica who'd graduated high school with Colleen's nephew, hovered nearby with obvious interest. By tomorrow, half the town would know that Nathan Brooks and Mara Quinn had been seen having an intimate lunch together. In a place like ours, that was as good as taking out a billboard. The plan was working perfectly. Too perfectly, as it turned out. On Thursday evening, I was replacing a water heater for the Hendersons when my phone rang. Colleen's name appeared on the screen, and her voice was tight with barely controlled emotion. "Where are you?" she demanded. "The Henderson place. Why?" "Rita saw you having lunch with Mara Quinn yesterday. She said you two looked very cozy." Rita, Colleen's best friend and the town's unofficial gossip coordinator. I'd been counting on her to spread the word, but I hadn't expected the blowback to come this quickly. "We had lunch," I said calmly. "Is that a problem?" "Is that a problem?" Her voice rose to a near shriek. "Nathan, she's a married woman." The irony was so thick I could have spread it on toast. "So are you. That's different. How?" There was a long pause. When she spoke again, her voice was lower, more controlled. "Just be careful, okay? People talk in this town. I don't want them getting the wrong idea about you." "About me or about us?" Another pause. "I'll see you at home." She hung up, and I stood there in the Hendersons' basement, surrounded by pipes and hot water tanks, laughing until my sides hurt. The wrong idea. As if there was any right idea left to have about our marriage. That weekend brought the monthly farmers market, a community tradition that drew half the county to the town square. Colleen usually loved these events. The chance to see and be seen, to maintain her carefully cultivated image as the perfect suburban wife. This time, she begged off with a headache. "You go," she said, not meeting my eyes. "I'll just stay home and rest." I went, and I brought Mara. We walked through the market like any other couple, sampling cheese from the local dairy, buying apples from the Morrison farm, stopping to chat with neighbors and acquaintances. Mara had dressed carefully for the occasion. Jeans and a sweater that managed to be both casual and elegant, her hair loose around her shoulders. She looked beautiful, and more importantly, she looked happy to be with me. "This is evil," she murmured as we stopped at the flower stand. "I'm actually enjoying myself." "Careful. People might think you're having a good time with me." "God forbid." But she was smiling as she said it. We ran into Derek, Mara's brother and one of the local police officers. He was a good guy, straightforward and honest in the way that cops either were or weren't. He looked surprised to see us together but didn't comment, just made small talk about the weather and the upcoming football season. "You two seem happy," he said finally, and there was a question in his voice. "We are," Mara said simply, taking my arm. Derek nodded slowly. "Good. You both deserve to be happy." After he walked away, Mara squeezed my arm. "That was interesting. Your brother's a smart man. Smart enough to know when someone's been getting screwed over. He never liked Liam." "What about Colleen?" She considered this. He always thought she was high maintenance, too concerned with appearances. Diplomatic way of putting it. Derek's a diplomat when he wants to be. When he doesn't want to be, he's a cop. We bought flowers, roses for her, because why not lean into the symbolism, and continued our circuit of the market. By the time we left, we'd been seen by at least 30 people who knew both our spouses. Mission accomplished. That evening, I came home to find Colleen pacing the living room like a caged animal. She was still in her pajamas, her hair unwashed, looking like she'd spent the day working herself into a state of panic. "How was the market?" she asked, her voice artificially casual. "Good. Nice day for it. You should have come." "Rita called. She said you were there with Mara Quinn. Again." "I was." "Nathan?" She stopped pacing and looked at me directly. "What's going on?" This was it. The moment I'd been building toward for weeks. I could come clean, lay all my cards on the table, demand the truth about her relationship with Liam, or I could twist the knife a little deeper. "I'm making a friend," I said. "Is that okay with you?" "A friend? Nathan? She's married." "So are you." "That's not the same thing." "Isn't it?" I sat down on the couch, making myself comfortable. "You've been spending a lot of time with Liam lately. Book clubs, volunteer work, all those late nights. I figured if you could have male friends, I could have female ones." Her face went pale. "That's completely different. Liam and I have history. We're old friends. Mara and I are new friends. Which is worse?" She stared at me for a long moment, and I could see her trying to work out whether I was being naive or deliberately provocative. "People are talking, Nathan, about you and her." "Let them talk. You said it yourself. Liam will always be around, and I need to accept it. Well, I'm accepting it. I'm also expanding my social circle." "This isn't funny." "I'm not laughing." She opened her mouth to say something else, then seemed to think better of it. Instead, she turned and walked upstairs, leaving me alone in the living room with my thoughts and the satisfaction of a plan well executed. My phone buzzed. A text from Mara. How did she take it? "About as well as expected. Your turn tomorrow?" Looking forward to it. The next day was Sunday, which meant church for half the town and brunch for the other half. Mara and I chose brunch, specifically the new place on Main Street that had become popular with the after-church crowd. We timed our arrival perfectly. 12:30, just as the first wave of churchgoers was finishing up their eggs, Benedict, and gossip. Liam was there with a group of his real estate buddies, he holding court at a corner table and telling some story that had them all laughing. He saw us walk in and nearly choked on his mimosa. "Nathan," he called out, his voice too loud and too cheerful. "Fancy seeing you here." I waved back, then made a show of helping Mara with her chair, my hand lingering on her shoulder just a beat longer than necessary. Liam's eyes tracked the gesture, and his smile became strained. We ordered our food and settled in for the performance. Mara was brilliant, attentive without being obvious, laughing at my jokes, occasionally touching my hand as we talked. To anyone watching, we looked like a couple in the early stages of romance, all nervous energy and careful flirtation. "This is actually fun," she murmured, cutting into her French toast. "Don't sound so surprised." "I haven't been on a date in 8 years. I'd forgotten what it felt like." "This is a date?" She looked up at me, her expression suddenly serious. "Isn't it?" Before I could answer, my phone rang. Colleen's name on the screen, her timing impeccable as always. "Excuse me," I said to Mara, then answered the call. "Hello? Nathan, where are you?" Colleen's voice was tight with anxiety. "Having brunch? Why? With her?" "With Mara, yes. Is there something you needed?" There was a long pause. I wanted to make sure you were okay." "I'm fine. Better than fine, actually. I'm having a great time." Another pause. "When will you be home?" "When I'm done here. Don't wait up if you have plans." I hung up and looked across the table at Mara, who was watching me with interest. "She's panicking," she said. "Good. Your turn." She pulled out her own phone and dialed. "Hi, honey," she said when Liam answered. "I'm at brunch with Nathan Brooks." "Yes, again. We seem to have a lot in common." She paused, listening. "No, I don't think that's any of your business. You've been working so many late nights lately, I figured I should find my own entertainment." She hung up and smiled at me. "He'll be here in 20 minutes. "How do you know?" "Because he's a narcissist, and narcissists can't stand the thought of someone else playing with their toys. Even toys they've thrown away." She was right. 18 minutes later, Liam appeared at our table, his face flushed with anger and mimosas. "Mara," he said, ignoring me completely. "Can I talk to you, privately?" "I'm having brunch with Nathan," she said calmly. "Whatever you have to say, you can say in front of him." "This is ridiculous. You're making a scene." "I'm eating French toast. How is that making a scene?" Liam's jaw tightened. "You know what I mean." "Actually, I don't. Why don't you explain it to me?" The entire restaurant was watching now, conversations fading as people turned to stare at our little drama. Liam seemed to realize this, and his voice dropped to a harsh whisper. "You're embarrassing yourself, and me." Mara set down her fork and looked at him with the kind of cold fury that could freeze anything. "I'm embarrassing you. That's interesting, Liam. Tell me, what exactly have I done that's so embarrassing?" "You know what you're doing." "I'm having a meal with a friend. If that embarrasses you, maybe you should examine why." Liam looked at me for the first time, his eyes full of barely controlled rage. "Stay away from my wife, Brooks." "Or what?" I asked mildly. "Or we're going to have a problem." I stood up slowly, using every inch of my 6-foot frame. Liam was taller, but I had 40 pounds on him and arms built by 20 years of manual labor. "We already have a problem, Quinn. The question is what you want to do about it." For a moment, I thought he might actually take a swing at me. The entire restaurant held its breath, waiting to see if Sunday brunch was about to turn into a boxing match. Then Liam seemed to remember where he was, and his shoulders sagged. "This isn't over," he said, but the words sounded hollow. "Yes," Mara said quietly. "It is." He walked away, leaving us sitting there with the entire restaurant staring. Mara picked up her fork and took another bite of French toast as if nothing had happened. "Well," she said, "that was educational." "How so?" "Now I know exactly how far I can push him before he breaks." I sat back down, my heart still racing from the adrenaline. "And how far is that?" She smiled, and there was something predatory in it. "Not very far at all." The confrontation at brunch marked a turning point in our little war. Liam's public meltdown had been witnessed by half the town's social elite, and by Monday morning, the story had spread like wildfire. Nathan Brooks and Mara Quinn were having an affair, Liam Quinn was jealous, and Colleen Brooks was nowhere to be seen during the whole drama. I spent Monday morning at the Riverside Elementary School, replacing a boiler that had finally given up after 30 years of faithful service. The work was complicated enough to require my full attention, which was a blessing. Every time I stopped moving, I found myself thinking about the look on Liam's face when he'd threatened me, the way Mara had calmly destroyed him with nothing but questions, the growing certainty that we were approaching the point of no return. Around noon, my phone rang. Sandy, my office manager and the closest thing I had to a best friend, was calling from the shop. "Boss, you need to get down here," she said without preamble. "What's wrong?" "Your wife's here. She's been waiting for 20 minutes and she looks like she's about to spontaneously combust." I sighed. "Tell her I'll be there in 10 minutes. "You want me to stay?" Sandy was 62 years old, tough as nails, and had been running my office since I opened the business 8 years ago. She'd also been divorced twice and had very strong opinions about cheating spouses. "Yeah," I said. "Stay." I found Colleen pacing my small office like a trapped animal. She was dressed for work, professional skirt suit, hair perfectly styled, makeup flawless, but her hands were shaking and there were stress lines around her eyes that hadn't been there a week ago. "We need to talk," she said the moment I walked in. "Okay, talk." She glanced at Sandy, who was sitting at her desk pretending to work while obviously listening to every word. Privately. Sandy's heard worse. What's on your mind? Colleen's composure cracked slightly. Nathan, what the hell do you think you're doing? Working. Same as always. Don't play dumb with me. This thing with Mara Quinn has to stop. What thing? You know what thing. The lunches, the farmer's market, that scene at brunch yesterday. People are talking. I sat down behind my desk, making myself comfortable. Let them talk. This is serious. My reputation, your reputation. Your reputation? I laughed, and the sound was harsh even to my own ears. Colleen, your reputation is the least of our problems right now. Something in my voice must have warned her, because she stopped pacing and really looked at me for the first time. What do you mean? This was it, the moment I'd been building toward for weeks. I could have dragged it out longer, played more games, but suddenly I was tired of the charade, tired of pretending I didn't know what she was doing, tired of watching her lie to my face, tired of being treated like a fool in my own marriage. I opened my desk drawer and pulled out a manila folder. Inside were printed copies of every photo, every text message, every piece of evidence Mara and I had collected over the past month. I spread them across my desk like a poker player revealing a royal flush. Colleen went white, then red, then white again. Where did you get these? She whispered. Cloud storage is a wonderful thing, especially when your wife forgets that you share an account. She sank into the chair across from my desk, staring at the photos like they might disappear if she wished hard enough. Nathan, I can explain. Can you? Because I'd love to hear the explanation for this one. I picked up a photo of her and Liam in a hotel room, him kissing her neck while she laughed. Or this one. Another photo, the two of them in bed together, clearly taken the morning after. Or maybe this one. The last photo was the worst, Colleen and Liam at what looked like a jewelry store, him showing her rings. Engagement rings. We were just looking, she said weakly. Just looking at engagement rings. While you're married to me. Makes perfect sense. Sandy was no longer pretending to work. She was staring at the photos with undisguised disgust, and when she looked at Colleen, her expression could have melted steel. How long? I asked. Nathan. How long, Colleen? 6 months, she whispered. Maybe 7. And you were planning to tell me when? I was going to... I thought... I didn't know how... You didn't know how to tell me you wanted a divorce? It's not that complicated. You say, Nathan, I want a divorce. See? Easy. She looked up at me then, and for the first time in months, I saw something real in her eyes. Not the carefully constructed mask she'd been wearing, but actual emotion. Fear, guilt, maybe even remorse. I didn't want to hurt you, she said. You didn't want to hurt me. I repeated the words slowly, letting them hang in the air. So instead, you decided to humiliate me. Let me play the fool while you and your ex-boyfriend planned your future together. That was less hurtful? It wasn't supposed to happen like this. How was it supposed to happen, Colleen? What was the plan? Were you going to wait until he divorced Mara? Or were you just going to keep stringing us both along indefinitely? She didn't answer, which was answer enough. I gathered up the photos and put them back in the folder. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to go home, pack your things, and move in with Rita, or Liam, or whoever will have you, but you're not sleeping in my house tonight. Nathan, please. I'm not done. Tomorrow you're going to call a lawyer and file for divorce. Irreconcilable differences, no contest. You take your car, your clothes, and whatever personal items you brought into the marriage. Everything else stays with me. You can't just throw me out. Actually, I can. It's my house. I bought it before we got married, remember? You never bothered to put your name on the deed. Her face crumpled. Where am I supposed to go? I hear Liam's got a nice place. Maybe he'll take you in. His wife? We'll be filing for divorce, too. Funny how that works out. Sandy was nodding approvingly from her desk. About time someone called her on her bullshit, she muttered. Colleen turned on her. This is none of your business. The hell it isn't. I've been watching you treat that man like dirt for months, and I'm sick of it. You want to screw around with your ex-boyfriend? Fine, but don't expect sympathy when you get caught. Colleen looked between us, seeming to realize for the first time that she was completely alone. No allies, no support, no one willing to make excuses for her behavior. I need time to think, she said finally. You've had 7 months to think. Time's up. I stood up, indicating the conversation was over. I want you out by tonight. She left without another word, and I sat back down, suddenly exhausted. Sandy got up and poured me a cup of coffee from the ancient machine in the corner. You okay, boss? I will be. Good. She had it coming. My phone buzzed. A text from Mara. How did it go? It's done, I typed back. Your turn. Already handled. Liam's moving out this afternoon. I stared at the message, feeling a strange mix of satisfaction and sadness. After 12 years of marriage, it was over. Just like that. You know what the funny thing is? I said to Sandy. What's that? I feel relieved, like I've been holding my breath for months and I can finally exhale. That's not funny, boss. That's healthy. That evening, I came home to an empty house. Colleen had taken her clothes, her jewelry, and a few pieces of furniture I didn't care about. She'd also left her wedding ring on the kitchen counter, along with a note that said simply, I'm sorry. I threw the note away and put the ring in a drawer. Then I opened a beer, ordered pizza, and called Mara. How are you holding up? I asked when she answered. Surprisingly well. Liam cried, actual tears. I think he expected me to beg him to stay. Did you? I helped him pack. Told him if he forgot anything, he could buy a new one. I laughed despite myself. You're a hard woman, Mara Quinn. I prefer practical. What about you? Any regrets? I thought about it, looking around my empty house. It was quiet, peaceful in a way it hadn't been for months. No tension, no lies, no walking on eggshells around someone who clearly didn't want to be there. No, I said. No regrets. Good, because we're not done yet. What do you mean? The charity gala is next weekend. Colleen and Liam will probably show up together, thinking they've won. I think it's time to show them exactly what they've lost. I smiled, feeling something that might have been anticipation. What did you have in mind? Leave that to me. Just wear your best suit and be ready for a show. After she hung up, I sat in my quiet kitchen, drinking beer and eating pizza straight from the box. For the first time in months, I felt like myself again. Not the suspicious husband, not the betrayed fool, just Nathan Brooks. A man who'd been wronged, but wasn't broken. Tomorrow, I would start rebuilding my life. But tonight, I was going to enjoy the peace. The Riverside Children's Hospital Charity Gala was the social event of the year, the kind of affair where the town's elite gathered to write checks, network, and see who was sleeping with whom. It was held at the Riverside Country Club, a sprawling complex of manicured lawns and old money that had been hosting the event for the past 15 years. I hadn't planned on attending. Charity galas weren't exactly my scene. Too much small talk, too many people pretending to care about causes they'd forgotten by morning. But Mara had insisted, and after everything she'd done to help me, I owed her this much. I arrived at 7:30, wearing my best suit and feeling like an imposter among the doctors, lawyers, and business owners who made up the guest list. The country club's ballroom had been transformed for the occasion, with round tables draped in white linen, centerpieces of white roses, and soft lighting that made everyone look 10 years younger. Mara was waiting for me at the bar, and the sight of her took my breath away. She was wearing a black dress that managed to be both elegant and devastating, her hair swept up to show off the graceful line of her neck. She looked like she belonged here, comfortable and confident in a way I envied. You clean up nice, she said, handing me a scotch. You look incredible. Thank you. Are you ready for this? Honestly, I have no idea what this is. She smiled, and there was something predatory in it. Trust me. We found our table, number 7, strategically positioned with a clear view of the entrance and the dance floor. Mara had planned this carefully, I realized. We weren't just attending the gala, we were staging a performance. The other couples at our table were people I recognized but didn't know well. Dr. Martinez from the hospital, the Johnsons who owned the largest insurance agency in town, a few others whose names I couldn't remember. They welcomed us warmly, and I noticed the way their eyes lingered on Mara and me together. Word of our relationship had clearly spread. Nathan, Dr. Martinez said as we settled into our seats, I heard about you and Colleen. I'm sorry. Thank you. It's for the best, though. These things usually are. And Mara, how are you holding up? Better every day, she said, her hand finding mine on the table. Nathan's been wonderful. The gesture was small, natural-looking, but I could see the other guests noting it. By tomorrow, half the town would know that Nathan Brooks and Mara Quinn were officially a couple. At 8:15, Colleen and Liam made their entrance. They walked in together, her arm linked through his, both of them dressed to impress and wearing expressions of defiant happiness. Colleen had chosen a red dress that hugged every curve, her blonde hair falling in perfect waves around her shoulders. Liam was in an expensive tuxedo, looking every inch the successful businessman he pretended to be. They paused in the doorway, letting everyone see them together. It was a calculated move, designed to announce their relationship to the entire town in one dramatic moment. A few people applauded, others whispered, and I could feel the energy in the room shift. "Showtime," Mara murmured. They were seated at table 12, close enough that we could see each other clearly but far enough away to avoid immediate confrontation. Colleen spotted me first, her eyes widening when she saw Mara beside me. She said something to Liam, who turned to look in our direction. His face darkened when he saw us holding hands. "They look angry," I observed. "They look scared," Mara corrected. "There's a difference." The evening proceeded with the usual gala rituals, dinner, speeches, a silent auction that raised an impressive amount for the children's hospital. Through it all, I was aware of Colleen and Liam watching us, their expressions growing more strained as the night wore on. Mara played her part perfectly. She laughed at my jokes, touched my arm when she talked, even convinced me to dance during the band's set. I was a terrible dancer, but she made me look competent, guiding me through the steps with the same confidence she brought to everything else. "You're enjoying this?" I said as we swayed to some slow song I didn't recognize. "Immensely. You?" "More than I expected to." "Good, because the best part is coming up." At 10:30, the gala's organizers called for attention. The evening's final event was the announcement of the scholarship recipients, local students who would receive funding for college thanks to the money raised. It was always an emotional moment, with proud parents and grateful teenagers taking the stage. But before the scholarships could be announced, Mara stood up. "Excuse me," she said, her voice carrying across the ballroom. "I'd like to say something." The room fell silent. This wasn't part of the program, and people looked confused. The MC, a local news anchor, seemed uncertain whether to allow it. "I'll be brief," Mara continued, walking toward the small stage at the front of the room. "I just wanted to thank everyone for their support during a difficult time in my life." She reached the microphone, and suddenly every eye in the room was on her. She looked poised, confident, completely in control. "As many of you know, my marriage to Liam Quinn recently ended. What you might not know is why." I could see Liam starting to stand, his face pale. Colleen grabbed his arm, pulling him back down. 6 months ago, my husband began an affair with Colleen Brooks, a married woman who works in healthcare. They conducted this affair in hotels throughout our community, often during work hours, while lying to their respective spouses about their whereabouts. The silence in the room was absolute. You could have heard a pin drop. "I'm not sharing this information to embarrass anyone," Mara continued, her voice steady and clear. "I'm sharing it because I believe in honesty, in accountability, in the idea that actions have consequences." She reached into her purse and pulled out a manila envelope. These are copies of photographs, text messages, and hotel receipts documenting their affair. I'm donating them to the silent auction, with all proceeds going to the children's hospital. The crowd erupted. Some people gasped, others laughed, a few applauded. Colleen shot to her feet, her face red with rage and humiliation. "You snake!" she screamed across the room. "You vindictive snake!" "Colleen," Mara said calmly, "please don't make a scene. This is a charity event." "A scene? A scene?" Colleen was advancing toward the stage, her composure completely shattered. "You just destroyed my reputation in front of the entire town." "No," Mara replied. "You did that. I just documented it." Liam finally found his voice. "This is slander. I'll sue you for everything you have." "Actually," Derek Quinn said, standing up from his table near the back, "it's only slander if it's false. Since my sister has photographs, I'd say you're out of luck." The crowd was loving it. This was better than any soap opera, better than any reality show. Real drama, real consequences, real people destroying each other in front of their peers. Colleen reached the stage and tried to grab the envelope from Mara, but Mara stepped back smoothly. "If you want to bid on it, the auction closes in 10 minutes, she said. "Give me that." Colleen lunged for the envelope again, this time managing to grab it. The two women struggled briefly before the envelope tore, sending photographs scattering across the stage. The crowd surged forward to get a better look, and suddenly the stage was surrounded by people picking up photos and passing them around. Colleen stood in the middle of it all, her red dress torn, her hair disheveled, screaming at anyone who would listen. "Those are private. You can't look at those." But people were looking, and laughing, and taking pictures with their phones. I made my way through the crowd to the stage, where Mara was standing calmly in the eye of the storm. "I think that went well," she said. "You're insane." "Probably. But I feel better." Colleen spotted me and rushed over, grabbing my arm. "Nathan, you have to stop this. Make them stop." I looked down at her. This woman I'd been married to for 12 years, who I'd loved and trusted and built a life with. She was destroyed, humiliated, reduced to begging for help from the man she'd betrayed. I should have felt sorry for her. Instead, I felt nothing. You chose him, I said quietly, my voice carrying in the sudden hush that had fallen around us. I chose his wife. The crowd erupted again, and this time the laughter was directed at her. Colleen's face crumpled, and she ran from the ballroom, pushing through the crowd and disappearing into the night. Liam tried to follow her, but was blocked by Derek, who had made his way to the front. I think you should leave, Derek said, his hand resting casually on Liam's arm, before this gets any worse. Liam looked around the room, seeing nothing but hostile faces and raised phones. His career in this town was over. His reputation was destroyed. His future was ruined. This isn't over, he said, but the words sounded hollow. Yes, I said, echoing Mara's words from weeks ago. It is. He left, and the crowd gradually dispersed, people returning to their tables to discuss what they'd just witnessed. The MC, looking shell-shocked, announced the scholarship recipients to a distracted audience. Mara and I sat back down at our table, where our dinner companions were staring at us with expressions ranging from awe to terror. Well, Dr. Martinez said finally, that was certainly memorable. I hope we didn't ruin your evening, Mara said politely. Are you kidding? This is the best gala we've ever had. We'll be talking about this for years. As the evening wound down, Mara and I walked out together, leaving behind the wreckage of 2 marriages and 4 lives. The night air was cool and clean, a relief after the stifling atmosphere of the ballroom. Any regrets? I asked as we reached our cars. None. You? I thought about Colleen, probably crying in some hotel room or at Rita's house. I thought about Liam, facing the reality of losing everything he'd worked for. I thought about the life I'd built and lost and was now free to rebuild. No, I said. No regrets. Mara stepped closer, her hand touching my chest. So what happens now? Now we see if this thing between us is real or just revenge. What do you think? I looked down at her, this woman who'd helped me reclaim my dignity and my life. She was beautiful, brilliant, ruthless when she needed to be, and somehow, impossibly, she seemed to care about me. I think, I said, it's real. I kissed her then, in the parking lot of the Riverside Country Club, with half the town probably watching from the windows. It was real and honest and completely without pretense. When we broke apart, she was smiling. Good, she said, because I'm not done with you yet. As I drove home to my empty house, I thought about the future. Tomorrow, there would be consequences. Colleen would probably try to salvage her career, Liam would likely leave town, and the gossip would fade eventually. But tonight, for the first time in months, I felt like myself again. Not the betrayed husband, not the wronged party, not the victim of someone else's choices. Just Nathan Brooks, a man who'd been knocked down but had gotten back up. A man who'd learned that sometimes the best revenge was simply living well, and I intended to live very well indeed.